It's amazing how innovation can facilitate the joy of making music. Take the steel pan, for instance. What was once a container for fuel has been transformed into a musical instrument that enriches the world. Most of us who have enjoyed steel pan have done so through an ensemble, a steel band, or steel orchestra. However, with increasing popularity of steel pan, what will be the next setting that will benefit the future of pan players? One idea is the exploration of steel pan chamber music. In tonight's lecture recital, I will talk about how chamber music can be artistically and educationally beneficial for steel pan programs. We'll go over the growth of steel pan programs in North American schools. We'll discuss the available published steel pan repertoire. We'll talk about the challenges of writing chamber music for steel pan, arranging chamber music for steel pan, and the inclusion of mixed instruments in chamber music. And we'll also talk about the educational benefits of steel pan chamber ensemble. Finally, closing of a discussion of what is next for the future of steel pan chamber music. First, let's look at how fast steel pan has grown in North American schools. The steel pan has only been around for a little bit over 70 years. In relation to its immigration into North America, only been around since the late 50s and 60s, when people like Dr. Meiman was recruited by Murray Norrell to come to New York to build pans for at-risk youth. In the 1970s, we see the emergence of pan programs in schools. Programs like Northern Illinois University Steel Pan starting in 1973. By 1981, there were only 13 pan programs, K through 12 and university, in North America, that is the United States and Canada. In the course of 9 years, programs have jumped up to 75. In 2012, it has exploded to 500 programs, and currently we have over 750 programs in the United States and in Canada. Mind you that these are just programs, not individual steel bands. Programs could have multiple ones. For instance, here at the University of Southern Mississippi, we have 2 steel pan programs, Semispo and the Fresh Pans of Bel Air. It's fantastic to see steel pan interest growing at such a rate. So I wanted to know what variety of steel pan programs are present in North American schools. Steel pan programs today in their current complement. Most pan programs typically begin with a small inventory of pans. This is of 2 reasons. One, pans are handcrafted and are usually made to order, so the supply and demand is a little bit biased. Cost varies on instrument and quality. You're looking at pans that can go for example, the single tenor can go from $700 to $5,000. That's just for one instrument. So that's quite a budget if you're trying to start a pan program. So most pan programs that start within 10 years or less will have a complement of members from 20 or less in the steel pan program. The result of the pie graph that you see here is from a survey that I conducted with pan educators across North America. So the majority of pan educators surveyed have small pan programs, as seen on the chart. Due to the small inventory of pan chamber music, more compositions must be created to complement the small inventory in pan programs, hence chamber music in pan. What about the repertoire? In my research, I came across 16 different publishers of pan music. This was about over 1,000 published works. I divided the published material into 5 different categories: ensemble, also known as steel band, solo material, chamber music for pan only, chamber music of mixed instruments, and the other category, which is pan music incorporated into combo or percussion ensemble. As seen in the chart, there is a massive inventory of steel pan ensemble repertoire. And yet for chamber ensemble repertoire, we have only about 2% for pan only and 2% for chamber pan mixed ensemble. Due to the small inventory of pan chamber music, again, more compositions must be created. So now that we've gone over some of the history of pan programs and what inventory is available in terms of published material, let's talk about the challenges of writing for pan chamber music. There are at least 10 instruments in the steel pan family, in the modern steel pan family. A lot of them are variations of the 5 basic ones we see here: tenor, double second, triple guitar, cello, and 6 bass. These 5 pans are the most common ones you find in North American pan programs. The ranges of these pans are varied by the manufacturer. For example, these double seconds right here, which I own, go down to an F sharp, whereas another set of double seconds in the inventory of Semispo can go down to a D. So we're looking at a few half steps difference. Like most instruments, balance could be a factor, especially when dealing with the higher ranges of the instrument. In terms of pan, we have a smaller bubble to play the tone at, which means a smaller resonance. For composers, recognizing balance issues could factor in their composition process. For performers, addressing technical practices, as in velocity to strike the instrument, the mallet density used, etc., must be factored in rehearsing steel pan chamber music. Again, the idea of this, the chamber music pan ensemble, is that there's one of each instrument, or a variation of so. So I first would like to play an original piece of music. How many in the audience know the author Kurt Vonnegut? Show of hands. We got one, a couple there. Probably known of his more famous work, Slaughterhouse-Five. He's one of my favorite authors. And in the book Cat's Cradle, Kurt Vonnegut describes the scientist who's developed a new compound for water that has a high freezing point, a lot higher than our normal freezing at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And this could be a very dangerous compound. If dropped into, let's say, the ocean, it would cause a chain reaction and would turn the entire Earth into one giant block of ice, or as the story goes. So this piece is written for pan trio, for tenor, cello, and double seconds. This work is minimalist work. You'll have an ostinato happening between the cello and double seconds, with the tenor coming in with a hocket-like fashion with its melody. Afterwards, the time signatures become truncated, smaller and smaller as the patterns go in, until it finally ends to one final note, like the last drop of water turning to ice. So at this moment, I would like to bring onto the stage Mark Elsenson and Andrew Hunkler in the performance of Ice Nine for Pan Trio. little bit how we arrange the stage. Composing original music for chamber steel pan has its challenges. Arranging for chamber music steel pan, however, is a different ballgame. So the next few slides in my discussion of arranging for steel pan chamber music is going to correlate with our next piece, Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik. So some of the challenges that we'd find in anything with arranging, especially for pan chamber music, is transposing to fit in the pan range. Again, the instruments have a limited range, and it's also varied based on the manufacturer. In this excerpt, we have the cello from measures 35 through 38. A little simple back and forth between D and A. And then below is the arranged cello excerpt that you will hear in the program. Notice how in the cello arrangement, I've only moved the A pitch up an octave. That is because the A is out of range for the pan. However, the D pitch stays the same. Although the cello does have a note an octave above that we can fit to it, again, it goes back to that whole issue of resonance. And since this particular D pitch sounds better, we will keep the D pitch there. Sometimes in arranging for pan, certain phrases will have to be switched to another instrument, as in this next excerpt. So this is from measures 18 through 19. As you can see, we have our 4 different voices, violin 1, violin 2, viola, and cello. This particular arrangement that I've done is written for 2 tenors, tenor 1, tenor 2, double seconds, and cello pans. If you can look at the violin 2 part, we have a passage that goes down to B natural, and then with a little bit down to that A below. Unfortunately, that is out of the range for the tenor pan, which is lowest note is C. Instead of bringing, let's say, the entire phrase up an octave, I instead decided to give that part to the double seconds, which is in the lower part of its range and sounds a bit better. With that, the tenor 2 is going to reinforce the roll note on G as what the tenor 1 has. Since the viola and cello both have a ostinato pattern of G, the cello pan can keep that note as it is. Other issues. As you can see here, this is a violin 2 viola excerpt, measures 5 through 6. Again, the violin 2 part is slightly out of range for the tenor 2 part. So I switched it out with the double seconds. Now, as you can see, the violin 2 has this dyad happening between B and D and then with C and D. Quite easy on the violin. On the pans, however, playing these notes in succession on double stops very fast can be a bit tricky. So, what I did in this arrangement is I split the dyads in an alternating fashion. The effect of the harmony is still intact while being more applicable to the performer. Now these are only a few things, a few of the challenges that can be found when arranging for pan chamber music. This has been a real joy to arrange, but an even more joy to rehearse. We all know of this piece. You can find people down the street and say, "Excuse me, do you know any Mozart?" And they'd probably sing bum, 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 bum. There you go. So what better than to play this on a pan quartet of Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik, arranged for 2 tenor pans, double seconds, and cellos. At this moment, I would like to bring onto the stage Chris Miller, Mark Elsenson, and Andrew Hunkler. it is important that pan chamber music repertoire expands from its current catalog. However, in order to prosper as an art form, the inclusion of other instruments must be addressed. So again, from the earlier slide of the available published works, only 2% of published pan music includes instruments other than pan. If we include other instruments, this would boost interest in steel pan programs from fellow classmates. If we take, for example, those of us who are members of SEMISPO, we have people in this group who primary instruments include flutes, tuba, saxophone, etc. And this is the beauty of pan music. Everyone can join in. And if we get more music that include more of other people's instruments in, we can boost up the attendance of these pan programs. Which is really good because the majority of educators in my survey have a chamber music program in their school. So if we incorporate these instruments into their pan program with music, this will boost up interest overall for pan programs. But what we need is more music. So I wrote some more music. Pearl Street Waltz. So I wrote this piece about a few years ago, originally as a jazz vibe tune. This is about Pearl Street, just right outside of campus here. This is where I live. I live on Pearl Street. And in the mornings going into class, it was really beautiful seeing the sunrise over the administration dome. So I decided to write a little tune to it. But after writing the tune, I was trying to figure out what I can do to arrange. I first tried arranging it for percussion ensemble, and was enjoying it a little bit, but I still haven't quite sold on it. So I thought, why not mix chamber ensemble, mix chamber music, and including with the solo on flute. So with that, I would like to introduce on the stage Lindsay Key, Andrew Hunkler, Justin Sherritt, and Andy Gilstrap in a performance of Pearl Street Waltz. in this auditorium, whistling the melody to that tune, then I've done my job. So we've discussed the artistic challenges and benefits of steel pan and chamber music. Well, how about the educational perks? One, it broadens the performance opportunities to students. We're always looking as teachers to give more music to our students. So having chamber music and steel pan would be one of those options. Two, helps develop music and work ethic skills for students. For so many of us, our time in music is with a large ensemble in front of a director who's giving out orders, and we follow them. But with this, the students can find their own times, organize their own times to rehearse, and work together to make music. Third, this is beneficial for emerging and small pan programs. Again, from our previous chart about how small some of these new programs are with so many instruments, this would be right up their alley in terms of inventory and repertoire. For larger programs, this would be a nice diversity into your concerts. So you can intertwine large ensemble steel band music with chamber music. And lastly, from the educators themselves that I surveyed, over 61 responses from pan educators, a large majority of them, 75%, either strongly agree or agree that chamber music for steel pan is a great idea. What we need is more music and more exposure, which is what we have for the future. Expand the repertoire. Talked about this before. It was amazing in my study, I found out that 94% of the respondents said that they compose and or arrange music for steel pan. So a focus on chamber music would drastically expand the repertoire. You can even get students involved too, to have their own arrangements for music. Getting commissions from professional composers, even if they've never played or even heard of a pan before. Such exposure like that would be beneficial. Exposure to music societies. If we showcase concerts and competitions that have pan chamber music, this would be beneficial to the educators. Societies like the Percussive Arts Society, the newly established National Society for Steel Band Educators, NSSBE, and then also national, state/provincial music education associations, depending on where you live. A year ago, we had a guest artist come by, Victor Provost, fantastic pan musician and composer. And I had the privilege of having a lesson with him. Though my lesson, I did not play on pan, I gave him my music. Things like Pearl Street Waltz, for example. And we discussed about composition and arrangement techniques. And at the end of the lesson, I asked him, what's the future? What's for the future of the pan? And he says the future of the pans, we need to explore what these drums can do, what these pans can do, what these instruments can do in terms of making music. Steel pan chamber music could be one of those roads into making even more beautiful music out of this very, very young instrument. Are there any questions? I'd like to thank you all for attending this lecture recital. I'd like to thank all the musicians that performed with me today. Can we give another round of applause for them? They did such a great job. I'd like to thank Dr. John Wooten for helping me put together this lecture recital, all the help he has had for this. I'd also like to thank Dr. Chris Tanner and Dr. Brandon Haskett. Both of them are board members of the National Society for Steel Band Educators. When I started the survey, it was hard for me to try to, promote this out to get this, get this survey out to the teachers. And these two fine gentlemen and fine educators helped me promote this, and it's been just fantastic. If you are a steel pan educator and haven't already, please look into National Society of Steel Band Educators. Is weteachpan.org off the top of my head. Anyway, the National Society of Steel Band Educators. I just got done attending their inaugural conference. It's fantastic. I learned so much. And for those of you who are interested in exploring more about how teaching pan, I advise you to join this society. And lastly, I'd like to thank my parents, Joe and Beth Meiman, and my brother Tristan Meiman. Once again, I could not get one step in front of the other without the love and support of all three of them. They are my rock. But other than that, thank you very much, and have a great evening.